All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about NVIDIA earnings, and specifically I wanted to talk about the relationship NVIDIA earnings has on Palantir. I listened to the entire earnings call yesterday from NVIDIA. I was doing it live, so thank you to anyone who showed up live with Jensen Huang. And this was one of the first times I have actually listened to the guy speak, which is why I don't deserve the gains that NVIDIA shareholders got yesterday, because I haven't looked into the company, I haven't done enough research in the company, and that's why I frankly don't deserve those gains. Listening to him for the first time really accentuated my understanding of what it means to invest in AI and what the third order, second order, fourth order derivative companies like a Palantir are going to have in terms of benefits to their overall market, their overall TAM, and their overall go-to-market strategy when it comes to helping customers adopt AI. So we've got a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to get into it, and we're going to talk about the implications that it means for Palantir. First thing, high-level NVIDIA results. The market was expecting 11.04 billion. NVIDIA came in with 13.5 billion. That is a $2.5 billion beat. Instead of growing 88% year over year, or sorry, 60% quarter over quarter, they're growing 88% quarter over quarter, now growing 101% year over year. Absolutely insane numbers. Instead of EPS of $2.07, they came in at EPS of earnings per share of $2.70. And for next quarter, they are guiding that they are going to do $16 billion in revenue, a 33% sequential growth from the current quarter. These numbers are just out of this world. And what it really highlighted, outside of, the numbers impacting the stock and it's kind of saying maybe the valuation was cheaper before, it was this idea that demand is not faltering for AI, demand is not faltering for chips, demand is not faltering for compute. And although there may be competitors, and unfortunately NVIDIA's biggest clients will inevitably become their biggest competitors like Google and Meta that don't want to be beholden to NVIDIA forever, for the foreseeable future, there is no choice but NVIDIA. Even Elon Musk said in the Tesla earnings call a month ago that they are ordering as many NVIDIA chips as they can get their hand on until they can fully build out Dojo, because they just don't have the R&D, the experience, and really, quite frankly, the vertical integration to be able to do their own compute and their own chips. Right now, NVIDIA is the king of the game, and as a result of that, NVIDIA has been heavily rewarded. We can take a look on their stock. It's up 1% on the day. After hours yesterday, it was up at $515. It was up almost 10%. So market sold it off a little bit. It's not red yet. Obviously, the market feels that maybe the valuation is getting a little too intense, but still, the earnings were amazing enough for the market to really feel receptive towards it and maybe think that the valuation is overall cheap in the long term if this type of demand can continue to go forward. So that's what I want to talk about in this video, because that's going to have the implications for what it means in the context of investing in Palantir. Is demand going to go away? And this was the central question on the earnings call that I listened to yesterday for Jensen Huang, and he reiterated many times throughout the call this kind of same argument that he's been speaking about for the past 5-6 years to get the market to understand that you may think these numbers are crazy and these numbers are insane and that there's no way they can keep it up, but we don't even think we have begun. And that's why they also authorized a no expiration $25 billion buyback, because at $1 trillion market cap, they still feel their stock might be cheap. What was his answer to demand? It was a pretty simple answer. Right now, the world has switched in terms of how it handles computation from legacy IT infrastructure to be able to compute different tasks for organizations to accelerated computing, first part, and second part, generative AI. These two parts are going to fundamentally change the paradigm that is involved in the $1 trillion spend on data centers. If that is the case, there's $1 trillion in data center spend worldwide. I think about 250 billion every year organizations allocate to that. That means that $250 billion is going to have to be spent in a fundamentally different way on accelerated computing and generative AI, away from the legacy IT spend. Now, why is that going to happen? Because if you can answer that why question, the math makes sense, the numbers make sense. Okay, big TAM, lots of money, lots of people that want to allocate resources and to the tunes of billions of dollars towards this type of accelerated computing model. Why is this happening? And the core reason it's happening, which is exactly what Alex Karp has been saying, which we're going to listen to in a second, is that it makes your organization more effective. It makes your employees more productive. It allows you to stimulate and predict and understand what's going to happen in your organization in a way that you could not do before. It's basically like in the 2000s, if you had a .com, you had a fundamental advantage because Google search was brand new and you showed up when people search stuff, so you got all the sales. Now, Google search is very crowded 20 years later because everyone is on the web. Everyone's on the website. The internet has fundamentally changed everything. In the context of generative AI, Jensen Huang's argument is like, we haven't even started. This is just beginning. This revolution of every organization in the world getting to a point where they can adopt generative AI, LLMs, etc. within their business, it's just getting started, which is why demand is going to be there for a long time. Maybe there's going to be more competitors, but the overall macro demand is going to be there. And you can kind of believe him because think about cloud computing. I mean, cloud computing is still in its infancy, and it started in 2006. 90% of servers and organizations are still using on-prem for their data versus the cloud, which means there's a massive market for AWS, GCP, and Azure to still be able to capture. So if cloud computing itself is still in its infancy, I don't even think generative AI has begun. And that's kind of what Jensen Huang was saying. And so the numbers are incredible because the prosperity it's going to create is going to be amazing. But there's a lot of prosperity to go because it simply has not started in terms of that revolution. What does that mean for Palantir? Palantir is selling a product called AIP, Artificial Intelligence Platform. It is a tooling infrastructure that allows your organization to be able to implement the types of LLMs you need to be able to implement, the large language models, in order to be able to change the relationship your employees have with getting information from the organization to be able to make high-level decisions. It is overall synergistic with Palantir's Foundry, which creates an ontology of your data, so it takes data from everywhere that's siloed in the organization, puts it together to help you make decisions. The LLM, i.e. the AIP, is just a new way to relate to that information at scale. NVIDIA's demand in terms of GPUs and chips and compute is incredibly important because those LLMs implemented in all the organizations that Palantir wants to partner with and be able to ultimately get as clients that are going to pay them millions of dollars a year for AIP need to be trained. So when people are like, why is, Palantir was up at $16 after hours yesterday, now it's back at like 15, 20 or whatever, but why did it pop 5%? Because institutional investors recognize a very simple thing. If NVIDIA demand for AI and GPUs is growing, that means the overall demand, the overall market for training LLMs, which requires those GPUs, is growing. That goes back to Palantir, because Palantir is selling you the tooling infrastructure to be able to integrate those LLMs into your organization. It's a simple syllogism. GPU demand means LLMs need to be trained. LLMs needing to be trained means Palantir has a market to be able to sell AIP, the AI tooling infrastructure, to be able to allow LLMs to be securely adopted within an organization. If there is no more GPU demand, that means LLMs don't need to be trained because organizations are like, we don't see the value in large language models. We don't really need to train them. We can just do stuff through Excel spreadsheets, which means Palantir doesn't have a market to sell AIP to. The fact that that demand is there, it trickles down to these third-order derivative companies because now the market recognizes we need LLMs, we need to be able to train LLMs, and then Palantir comes in with AIP to help you properly adopt this. Let's look back to a couple minutes of Alex Karp talking about this a long time ago because I think what NVIDIA said yesterday will actually highlight what Karp has been saying around the demand for AI and why the demand has been so explosive from his perspective.
So right now, the whole world is hungry for something that it understands as AI, which is really AI or large language models. We are actually have customers using our products, showing other customers how to do it. I mean, this is like you release a song and everyone is playing it. It's like, okay, great, we're very happy. And the thing is, the U.S. market is just hungry for innovation. It's hungry for things. It's now beginning. Beginning to understand it needs, like an ability to map an LLM onto your enterprise securely, ability to enhance the output of a large language model, and what's the output? Better margins, better safety. You can change your enterprise in weeks.
So, a couple things there that are incredibly important. What Karp is talking about is that the US is a market that's starting to recognize that these things are necessary within an organization. You actually do need the LLMs to be implemented. You need it to be implemented in a secure way that protects the data, that makes sure the data doesn't get leaked, et cetera, et cetera. AIP, Palantir's confidential platform, can do all of that for you. And the outcome of that is better margins, better revenue production per employee, better overall productivity of the entire organization. Why does that matter? Because that is the bull case for AI. When Bloomberg says there's going to be $4.4 trillion spent by 2033 on enterprise AI, at some level I was like, 4.4 trillion, that's a lot of money. I don't know if that's going to happen. Listening to Jensen Huang yesterday, his argument was the reason we have this much demand, and again, this is not me saying it, this is like looking at the numbers. They did 2.5 billion more in revenue than they said they were going to do. The reason they have that much demand is because enterprises across the world are starting to recognize this makes our organization better. It makes us more effective. It makes us more productive. And as a result, it's like getting, again, on the internet in the 2000s. We need to do this because if our competitors are doing this, if Sally from Verizon is able to pull up customer data within seconds because she's interacting with an LLM versus John from AT&T has to go through 17 different Excel spreadsheets to be able to find the customer data, Verizon's going to get that sale. They will get that customer over us. And if we're not able to compete at that scale, then we're just going to lose. The tech companies, from an investor perspective, especially a Palantir investor perspective, that I want to place my bets on are the companies that help Verizon or AT&T implement that LLM, that large language model, into the organization in order for them to be able to get the data. Palantir is never going to be NVIDIA in the context of selling chips and GPUs. I mean, NVIDIA has 30 years of R&D to be able to even get to this point to be able to sell this to the market. But Palantir can be one of those companies that benefits from the overall change in AI in the macro, to be able to sell these products into the market and to be able to have a market that is very hungry for these products in the first place. And I think this also makes a lot of sense if you look at NVIDIA's demand when you look at Palantir's latest earnings. Earnings wasn't great in terms of 13% year-over-year growth, but I think that's a very elementary way of understanding earnings. They have 400 potential customers that are in the pipeline to be customers for AIP. 100 that are using it within 10 weeks of launching it, which is insane. They launched it around June. And 300 additional enterprises in conversations to be able to get set up and use it. If that number can get to 1,000 by the end of 2024, which is a little bit more of a double from here, but you would give them, 6 quarters to get there. If that demand, Karp says they're getting 12 months of calls in 1 month. If that demand is truly growing at that level, and 400 in a single 10 weeks is pretty amazing. And they can monetize 50, 60, 70% of those by early 2025, we will see this type of revenue growth that we're seeing in NVIDIA. Obviously not at the tunes of billions a quarter, but you're going to see this is going to start raking up because on the macro, organizations need this. On the macro, GPU demand is there. On the macro, LLMs are becoming a de facto thing you need in an organization. And on the macro, every organization is bought into the fact, which is what Karp talked about as well, that we don't have to sell them on the solution and problem. We just show them what they can do because they already know that they need this, they need this, they need this. And if they really need this, they need an ontology, which means you need to buy Foundry. So it's this beautiful sort of synergy that's happening with every sector of the economy when it comes to AI. And Palantir, I think, is going to play a pivotal role in implementing AIP into all these organizations. The risk to this is Palantir's lack of execution on getting enterprises to adopt their software. I do not think it's a product risk. I think Palantir is, it seems like, one of the best products in the world. And if you have 400 potential customers in 10 weeks, 5,000 employees in 100 of those enterprises already using it, and that's growing 50% month over month, it seems like they've got something here. The question becomes, can they close enough deals? Can they figure out a pricing strategy that makes sense for both parties? And can they somehow expand to get the next 400 by 2024 and actually close all of those deals? Can they actually get people on this software using it and eventually monetize it at scale? I believe they'll be able to do that. Given what I heard from Jensen Huang yesterday, my conviction has only gotten deeper because it seems like demand for AI GPUs are not going anywhere. Which means if demand is not going anywhere, Palantir should be able to benefit. And if Palantir is going to be able to benefit, I think if you missed out on the NVIDIA run like me, because you never care too much to learn about NVIDIA, which is, I accept responsibility for that, but you did care to learn about Palantir, then it's one of those situations where Palantir is a very interesting company to look at as a shareholder or investor to potentially take a bet on where the future of AI is going to go. So, people can still argue. You can still make an argument for that Palantir is overvalued with 13% year-over-year growth, and that means we might, you might want to wait for a pullback to DCA. You might not want to go balls deep right now. But what does matter is where is the macro story going, and can you get some shares before the macro story plays out for Palantir, which means they're able to grow more than 13% year-over-year. But is there even a market for them to be able to get those types of growth numbers? And it seems like NVIDIA yesterday absolutely confirmed that market is real. It exists. Now it's just a question of if Palantir can go and capture it. So those are my thoughts. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. If you got to the end of this video, comment Beats headphones. Somehow put that in your comment. Beats headphones. Thank you guys for listening and watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.